The station at Khalees Rift hummed with the noise of countless languages, a living knot of trade and diplomacy on the edge of the mapped galaxy. Humans were still newcomers here, barely 2 decades into formal contact, but they had adapted quickly, carving out a reputation for stubborn honesty and unpredictable innovation. Among the market's winding lanes, a young human family walked together. The father carried bags of alien fruit, the mother's hand rested lightly on her daughter's shoulder. The girl's eyes darted from stall to stall, drawn to glowing fabrics and caged creatures that chirped like glass bells. She laughed at the strange scents drifting through the air: burned ozone, rich spice, the tang of oil, and the sound turned alien heads. For most here, humans were curiosities. For the Empire, they were potential resources. It began without warning. 3 Imperial enforcement drones descended from the station's upper decks, their sleek frames reflecting the market's lights. They moved in perfect formation, speaking no words. The crowd shifted instinctively away, knowing what came next. The drone stopped directly in front of the girl, scanning her with beams of shifting blue. The mother stepped forward. "She's a child," she said, her voice sharp. The drones did not answer. Metal arms extended, locking around the girl's small frame. She gasped in shock, the laugh gone from her lips. The father lunged forward, but a burst of ionized air from one drone threw him backward into a fruit stand. The mother grabbed the child's wrist, her knuckles whitening. One drone emitted a flat tone. "Subject identified. Genetic sample acquisition authorized." The girl screamed. It wasn't the high, frightened cry the crowd expected. It was raw, desperate, cutting through the station's noise. That scream seemed to paralyze the aliens nearby. To them, a child was simply a smaller adult. This sound, this tearing plea, was alien. They turned their eyes away. No one moved to help. The drones lifted off with mechanical precision, the girl's legs kicking helplessly. Her mother stumbled forward, nearly falling as she tried to follow, but the gap between them widened with each second. The father struggled to stand, a bruise already forming along his jaw. His hands shook not from pain, but from a helpless rage he could not yet voice. High above, the drones disappeared into a secure docking bay reserved for Imperial craft. Security barriers fell into place, sealing the passage. The market resumed its movement, but in muted tones. Traders avoided the humans' eyes. They had seen this before, an acquisition, ordered by Imperial science divisions. Once taken, no one returned. The human ambassador to Khalees Rift arrived minutes later, his diplomatic badge glinting under the station lights. He spoke in clipped, precise tones, issuing demands to the station's control AI, requesting immediate release of the detainee. The AI's voice was smooth and unmoved. "Imperial jurisdiction invoked. Biological analysis in progress. Case closed." The ambassador did not shout. He simply raised his wrist, opened a secure channel, and spoke 4 words that would ripple across every human network in the galaxy. "They took her. Confirm." His message was tagged with the highest priority, bypassing all civilian channels, routed straight to Earth's Central Defense Command. The mother sat on the deck plates, arms wrapped around herself, whispering her daughter's name over and over. The father stood beside her, fists clenched so tightly his fingernails cut his palms. Around them, the air seemed colder. Somewhere far from Khalees Rift, on a planet whose oceans and forests had birthed a species with a history of defending its own to the last breath, that message was received. No committee debate. No drawn-out negotiation. In a fortified chamber beneath the Andes, a line of text appeared on a secure command screen: "Child taken by Empire." Below it, a single reply was entered: "Initiate retrieval." Among humans, there is no greater crime than stealing a child. And for crimes like that, there is no forgiveness. The Imperial city ship Orith Dominus drifted through the cold void, its hull a continent of black alloy etched with the sigils of 10 millennia of conquest. Within its vast command chamber, the abduction from Khalees Rift was not seen as an incident but as routine procedure. Counselors reviewed the data with clinical detachment, speaking in the slow, measured cadence of a power long accustomed to obedience. The human child, they agreed, exhibited genetic irregularities that merited long-term study. To them, the removal of a specimen, any specimen, was an administrative matter, not a provocation. The Empire had ruled the spiral arms for generations uncounted. Their doctrine was simple: superiority was a fact of heritage, and resistance was a mathematical impossibility. From the aquatics of the Vorn shoals to the stone-skinned Karen of the molten worlds, every species had bent the knee. None had the industrial base or the ferocity to challenge the Imperial fleet's immense bulk. Wars ended before they began. Compliance was as inevitable as the tides. Humanity, in their records, was a young anomaly, technologically competent yet socially primitive, prone to sentiment, driven by emotions that the Council catalogued as liabilities. Reports noted their hyper-focus on offspring protection, their willingness to expend extreme resources for individual survival, and their unpredictable adaptability under stress. These traits, analyzed in isolation, were dismissed as inefficiencies. The Empire's consensus was that such qualities made humans reactive, not strategic, a species incapable of sustaining prolonged conflict at galactic scale. An advisor from the Intelligence Directorate presented the preliminary assessment. The seizure would be protested, perhaps loudly, but with limited reach. Human fleets were scattered, their logistics untested. Trade sanctions, if attempted, would harm them more than the Empire. The Council moved to the next agenda item without concern. Far from Orith Dominus, smaller Imperial outposts began to receive irregular signals, sensor blurs that didn't match any known pirate signature, encrypted packets slipping into comm relays, power fluctuations in non-critical systems. Field commanders sent standard anomaly reports up the chain. The fleet AI reviewed them, deemed them low priority, and issued automated dismissals. Humans were simply probing, the AI concluded, testing boundaries before returning to compliance. The Empire's grand strategist, a veteran of 3 centuries of suppression campaigns, voiced the prevailing belief. "They are noise," he said to the assembly. "A young species barking at the gates. They cannot bite. They do not understand war at scale. They will petition, they will threaten, but they will not move." Around the table, agreement was unanimous. History had shown them no reason to expect otherwise. What they failed to see was that their very confidence was a blindfold. In their experience, lesser powers sought survival above all. But humans, whose recorded history contained wars fought over principle, over insults, over single individuals, were not wired for quiet submission. The Empire read the human record and saw recklessness. They did not see that this same recklessness had carried humans from firelit caves to the edges of the galaxy in less than 3 centuries. To the Council, the girl taken from Khalees Rift was a number in a ledger, a sample in a vault. They did not see her parents' faces, did not hear the scream that had echoed through the marketplace. They saw no spark to ignite a blaze. In their calculations, the humans' next move would be a formal protest, perhaps a temporary suspension of trade. Nothing more. The chamber adjourned without urgency. Orders were dispatched to continue the analysis uninterrupted. Defensive postures remained unchanged. In the Empire's long memory, no abducted subject had ever been recovered by force. It was, in their view, the immutable order of things. The first human incursion team was already in motion before the Empire's internal bulletins had even logged the abduction as resolved. They did not know it yet, but the ledger they had so casually amended was about to be rewritten in blood. On Earth, the transmission from Khalees Rift was received in a sealed command nexus buried under kilometers of rock. Within seconds, encrypted relays spread the message to every strategic hub across the system. There was no debate. The order for retrieval moved through military networks with the precision of a reflex. Defense satellites switched from standby to active targeting protocols. Orbital yards began rerouting fabrication lines from civilian contracts to war production without a single public announcement. Within hours, every ship capable of interstellar deployment was recalled. Carrier groups altered course mid-transit, tankers were stripped to serve as makeshift troop transports, and maintenance crews worked in shifts without pause. Engineers pulled power cores from research vessels to accelerate the arming of strike craft. The fleet roster swelled as dormant hulls were reactivated, old designs, unpolished, but functional. Every piece of metal that could move under its own power was being readied for one purpose. Political divisions dissolved instantly. Heads of state, normally slow to align, signed the Unified Declaration in less than 6 minutes of closed-session discussion. The wording was deliberate and absolute: return the child unharmed, or prepare for the consequences of your actions. The message was broadcast on open channels to ensure it reached not only the Empire but every neutral and allied world. It was not a plea. It was a deadline. Special Operations Command initiated deep infiltration of Imperial communications networks. Human cyber warfare units, operating from hidden relay ships, began dismantling security protocols layer by layer. Surveillance feeds from border stations glitched into static, navigational buoys transmitted false readings, and the Empire's secondary logistics grids experienced cascading failures. These were not random disruptions. They were markers, quiet warnings that humans had already breached systems the Empire considered untouchable. Across the colonies, recruitment centers overflowed. Veterans of past conflicts returned to service without hesitation. Civilians with no combat experience volunteered for logistics and support roles. Factories that had once built habitation modules now forged kinetic impactors and atmospheric breach ordnance. Training facilities ran at capacity, day and night, producing soldiers conditioned for rapid deployment in hostile environments. Messages from smaller powers began filtering in, coded to evade Imperial monitoring. Some offered intelligence on fleet movements, others provided schematics of lesser-known Imperial stations. Many were not allies in any formal sense. They simply saw in humanity a chance to challenge the order that had bound them for generations. These contributions were accepted without public acknowledgement, but every fragment of information was fed into the strategic model now being built for the coming strike. The operation's core principle was speed. No prolonged mobilization, no drawn-out positioning. The fleet would move as soon as the minimum strike threshold was met. Human commanders knew the Empire relied on slow, methodical escalation. They would answer with sudden, overwhelming force before the enemy could assemble an adequate counter. Final preparation orders moved through encrypted channels to every ship. Ammunition inventories were verified, medical bays stocked, AI tactical systems synced. Crews were briefed in short, precise directives: target, extract, disengage. There would be no occupation, no negotiation, only a surgical removal of the child and the elimination of any force that attempted interference. When the fleet assembled in high orbit, it filled the dark with angular silhouettes and heat blooms from reactor cores pushed to maximum output. No ceremony marked the moment. Drives engaged in silent unison, and the combined armada vanished into the distortion of faster-than-light transit. Behind them, Earth's night sky returned to stillness. Ahead lay Imperial space, and the certainty that those who had taken a single child would soon learn the full cost of their mistake. The human fleet emerged from faster-than-light transit inside territory the Empire considered untouchable. No warning broadcasts preceded them. Within the first heartbeat of arrival, every Imperial communication channel within the system was silenced under targeted jamming. Navigation relays went dark, defense satellites lost targeting solutions, and automated patrols reported sensor anomalies before falling into static. The Empire's garrison at Karsus Prime scrambled to respond, but their command structure fractured almost immediately. Human vessels did not approach in predictable formations. Smaller strike craft broke away in multiple vectors, weaving through the gravity wells of local moons, vanishing from scanners, then reappearing within weapons range. Heavy cruisers executed microjumps that bypassed minefields entirely, appearing inside the defensive perimeter before the Imperial crews could realign their weapons. Torpedo salvos struck with surgical precision, targeting power cores and sensor arrays instead of hull plating. The intent was clear: cripple the ability to fight, not waste time on drawn-out duels. Imperial captains attempted to reposition their fleets for counterfire, but every shift was met with flanking runs by human corvettes delivering concentrated bursts of railgun fire at exposed joints in armor plating. On the surface of Karsus Prime, the research complex holding the abducted child went from full lockdown to total breach in under 7 minutes. Orbital insertion pods slammed into the perimeter with pinpoint accuracy, disgorging Marines in powered armor that moved with relentless efficiency. Entry points were blown in sequence, inner defenses overridden by infiltration teams already inside the facility's network. Resistance was brief and costly for the defenders. Pulse carbines and shock drones proved ineffective against the layered shields and adaptive countermeasures the Marines deployed. In the central containment chamber, security fields failed without warning. 2 soldiers stepped inside, locating the small figure at the rear of the room. She was lifted gently, wrapped in protective material, and carried out without pause. The extraction team moved as a single unit, shields interlocked, their advance unbroken even as corridor bulkheads collapsed under emergency lockdown measures. Above, the human flagship coordinated the withdrawal with absolute precision. Kinetic penetrators from high orbit obliterated the remaining Imperial defense towers, leaving only molten craters where once stood centuries-old fortifications. Docked Imperial ships were destroyed in place with pinpoint strikes that avoided civilian areas, a calculated move that sent an unmistakable message. The humans were not here for conquest, only retribution. As the child was secured aboard the extraction craft, the fleet initiated a synchronized retreat pattern. Destroyers released clouds of autonomous drones programmed to intercept and disable any pursuit. These drones did not attack crew directly. Instead, they tore through propulsion systems, leaving enemy ships adrift and powerless. The entire engagement had lasted less than an hour. Karsus Prime's defense grid lay in ruins, its command authority cut off from the rest of the Empire. Yet the human fleet was already accelerating away, their objectives complete, their losses minimal. No broadcasts of victory were made, no demands issued beyond the silent statement written across the wreckage. They had come, they had taken back what was theirs, and nothing had been able to stop them. Long after the human ships vanished into the void, Imperial sensors continued to report phantom signatures, false echoes seeded into their systems during the attack. These would persist for weeks, eroding trust in their own defenses. For the first time in living memory, the Empire had not only been struck inside its own heartland but had been powerless to prevent it. The fleet carried the child home without ceremony. Every officer and crew member aboard understood that the true battle had been won not in the corridors of Karsus Prime, but in the minds of those who had once believed humanity could be taken lightly. That belief was gone, and in its place was the knowledge that an empire had been made to bleed. The return transit was silent. No celebration marked the crossing back into human space, only the steady rhythm of engines and the quiet vigilance of crews who understood the weight of what had just been done. The child slept under the constant watch of medical staff, her vitals steady, her small hands clutching the corner of the blanket she had been wrapped in during the extraction. Every soldier aboard had given her the same unspoken promise: she was safe now, and she would never be taken again. Word of the strike reached the galaxy before the fleet itself. Encrypted reports from sympathetic channels, intercepted distress calls from Karsus Prime, and the unmistakable gaps in the Empire's defense grid told the story without the need for human confirmation. Systems that had never dared defy Imperial law were suddenly alive with quiet speculation. For some, the news carried the sharp edge of fear. For others, it was a spark, proof that even the oldest, most entrenched power could be forced to yield. The Empire's formal response came in the form of a transmission delivered on every major galactic frequency. It was stripped of ceremony, a complete cessation of all biological acquisitions from human space, a public apology transmitted in every recognized language, and the unconditional release of all non-human subjects currently held in Imperial research facilities. Nowhere in the message was the word defeat spoken, yet the meaning was unmistakable. Earth's leadership rejected calls from some military factions to press the advantage. No fleets were sent to claim territory, no demands made for tribute. Instead, a simple statement was issued: any future interference with our people will be met with the same resolve. The wording was precise. There would be no negotiation over sovereignty, no tolerance for further violations, but no appetite for conquest. It was not weakness. It was control. For the smaller civilizations scattered through the spiral arms, the implications were profound. Many had lived under the unbroken shadow of the Empire for generations, believing that open defiance was suicide. Now they had seen a power that not only resisted but struck deep and returned unscathed. It was not a call to arms. Humans had not fought for anyone else's cause, but the example was enough to unsettle the balance the Empire had relied on for centuries. When the fleet reached orbit above Earth, no grand parades awaited them. The docking sequence was carried out as it always was, crews dispersing to their stations, maintenance crews moving in to restore the ships to readiness. The child was reunited with her parents in a private, sealed chamber. The mother knelt to her daughter's level, brushing a hand over her hair as though confirming she was real. The father stood close, one hand on her shoulder, his expression unreadable except for the relief in his eyes. Later, in the quiet of a secure room, the girl asked her mother a single question. "Did we win?" The answer came without hesitation. "We made sure they'll never try again." It was not the language of victory, but of certainty. Across the galaxy, stories of the strike continued to circulate. Some were embellished, others stripped down to the bare fact of the child's return. In every version, the core truth remained: humanity had proven it would act without hesitation to defend its own, no matter the scale of the threat. The Empire could recover its ships, rebuild its stations, and replace its officers, but it could not undo the knowledge now embedded in the minds of every power within reach, that there was a line which, once crossed, would bring the full force of humanity's will crashing down upon them. In the decades to come, diplomats and traders would speak of the Terran principle in hushed tones: humans do not start wars without cause. But when the cause is theirs, nothing in the galaxy can stop them.